The galactic conclave gleamed like a smug pearl in the orbit of a dead star, all polished spires and ceremonial banners that fluttered despite the vacuum. Representatives from 100 worlds convened in the Hall of Accord, robes brushing the floor, antennae twitching, scales glistening, voices hissing through translators. They expected something primitive, brash. Instead, they got a woman in boots and sunglasses, sipping tea. Ambassador Eliza Rhine strolled into the great chamber precisely 17 minutes late. "Oh dear, did I miss roll call?" she asked, southern drawl honey-thick and disarmingly pleasant. Her voice echoed like velvet thrown over a dagger. No entourage followed, only the sound of her heeled boots tapping against alien marble. She wore a cream blazer over practical black slacks, her hair in a loose knot, clipboard under one arm, and a thermal tumbler in the other. The humans, it seemed, had sent a secretary to meet an empire. High Chancellor Vrochthox of the Imperial Corps shifted uncomfortably on his haunches. 8 yellow eyes narrowed in unison. "We were expecting more." Eliza grinned, the kind of smile you give before flipping a card in poker. "This is more, Chancellor. Most folks can only handle less." Murmurs passed between delegates. The Seraphori glowed blue with confusion. The iron-bodied Thornkrell leaned forward, suddenly curious. The air thickened with telepathic question marks and bureaucratic offense. "We were told Earth would be eager to discuss integration," hissed a senator from the Silicate Alliance. "Oh, sugar," Eliza said, settling into her chair like she owned it. "We don't do eager. We do polite, sometimes nosy, occasionally sharp. But eager? Not since 1776. Vrochthox thumped a claw against his pedestal. "Humanity is a Category 4 species with limited reach. Our census shows." "Your census," she interrupted, "is about as accurate as a blindfolded man counting lightning bugs in a hurricane." She sipped. "Delightful weather you've got. So sterile." This wasn't how galactic negotiations worked. Empires barked, vassals bowed. Humanity should have begged, offered tribute, danced for favor. Instead, one lone woman sat coolly as if waiting for biscuits to bake. Chancellor Vrochthox tried again. "Do you understand the implications of declining the Empire's invitation?" Eliza set down her tumbler. "Absolutely. I decline them with full understanding and an open heart." "Then you refuse to negotiate?" "I do." She said it as if agreeing to lemonade over iced tea. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The Ulantari translators bulb-dimmed in shock. A scholar from the Beacon Hive fainted, legs curling inward. Even the Thornkrell leaned back, their expression unreadable. "You must clarify," said a floating archivist, trembling with tendrils. "Sure," Eliza said. "We're not here to talk treaties, or hand over access, or get assimilated. Frankly, I came for the snacks, and to check how y'all decorate. Very Gothic DMV meets Space Vatican. Charming. But Earth is unaligned," Vrochthox growled. "And you offer nothing?" "I offered cookies." She pushed a box across the table. "Chocolate chip. Homemade. Don't worry, no allergens unless you're deathly allergic to truth." A silence descended, the dangerous kind. Someone coughed. A chronomancer blinked into another dimension out of sheer discomfort. The Empire had faced defiance before. Rebellions, insurgencies, entire planets gone feral with resistance. But this was something new. Disrespect wrapped in warmth. Polite anarchy. Vrochthox leaned in. "Is this some form of primitive posturing?" Eliza blinked. "You think this is posturing?" Her voice cooled. "Sweetheart, if we were posturing, you'd be crying." The Thornkrell rumbled low, a sound halfway between amusement and alarm. The Seraphori changed color again, now a confused lavender. "Perhaps," said a minor diplomat from the Aquilian Reach, "you would consider economic exchange? Cultural sharing. I'll send over Netflix and a playlist." "But no, darling. We're good." One of the side delegates, younger, perhaps too bold, whispered to his neighbor, "Maybe humans aren't that advanced. Just erratic." Eliza's eyes cut toward him like a scalpel dipped in sugar. "We're not advanced. We're evolved. There's a difference. Ants build empires. Apex predators nap. Someone spilled their water. Vrokthok's attempted diplomacy. There are benefits to submission. There are benefits to anesthesia before surgery, too. Doesn't mean you want the operation. She stood then, gently. I've appreciated your hospitality. Really. Very welcoming for a bunch of species with collective superiority complexes. You're leaving. Oh, I never unpacked. Then Earth will be considered hostile. Consider us whatever helps you sleep at night. She walked toward the door. Stopped. Turned. I should mention, she said, as casually as talking about rain, I left a little gift box onto the table. Might be a music box. Might be something worse. Depends who opens it. The room held its breath. Eliza smiled. Humans don't bluff, Chancellor. We bait. Then she left, humming something suspiciously like Johnny Cash. As the door sealed behind her, the Empire realized it had no playbook for this. Not for enemies who smiled. Not for predators in pearls. She passed a mural on the way out, an enormous depiction of the Empire's history. Thousands of years of conquests, etched in crystalline relief. Alien warriors riding bioships through stars, enslaving moons, breaking empires in their talons. Eliza gave it a glance, unimpressed. Y'all sure love a montage, she muttered. Outside, her guide, a timid creature with too many fingers and a nervous twitch, scrambled to keep up. Ambassador Ryan, you are departing so soon? Darlin', I've overstayed already. They'll need hours to decide whether to panic or posture. Maybe both. But they expected. They expected desperation. Fear. The thing is, she paused to admire a sculpture made entirely of humming dark matter. Humans aren't scared of dying. We're scared of not mattering. Inside the chamber, chaos simmered. Arguments broke out. Accusations flew. Half the diplomats demanded war. The others suggested appeasement. No one could explain why the human diplomat scared them more than a full invasion fleet. She offered no weaponry, no threat, and still refuses to comply. A serpentine alien hissed. What manner of trickery is this? She may be a scout, another growled. A forward agent, softening us for something worse. Or she is the weapon. In an observation chamber above, Admiral Koss of the Thorn Krell stared at the recordings. Rewind that, he said. His aide replayed the scene where Eliza paused at the door, made her warning, and walked away. Koss narrowed his compound eyes. She's not bluffing. How do you know, sir? Because she wants us to think she is. Elsewhere, a young analyst watched recordings of Eliza over and over, frame by frame, lip movements analyzed by 17 languages. Nothing threatening, nothing explicit. Yet each time he shivered. He turned to his superior. What if we're looking for war, when we should be fearing patience? In the twilight hours, High Chancellor Vrokthok did not sleep. He rebooted. His kind required downtime, neural reordering. But this cycle, something was wrong. In his dream, the Grand Chamber was empty, save for a single human. Eliza stood at the center, not smiling this time. She stared at him, and behind her, shadows moved. Human shapes, vague and terrible. They did not speak. They simply waited, as though Earth had long ago learned that terror grew best in silence. Vrokthok rebooted early. Eliza stood again on her shuttle platform, watching the city lights blink like artificial stars. She sipped her tea, now lukewarm. Empires collapse slow, she murmured. Until they don't. She thought of her mother, a cold strategist, who once ended a war by doing nothing but leaking a single image. Let their enemies imagine more than you can do, she'd said. That's the real arsenal. Eliza had learned well. As her ship rose into orbit, Eliza watched the Empire shrink into a pattern of glittering wounds stitched into space. She thought of all the histories written by victors, and how little they understood the quiet victories. Not everything needed guns. Sometimes it just needed nerve. She recorded one last voice memo before entering stasis. Note to command. They'll fold within the month. Not because of what we said, but because of what we didn't. A pause. And Commander? Send another diplomat. But make it someone who can bake. These folks respond better to sugar than steel. She lay back, the hum of the engine a lullaby. Around her, the stars neither applauded nor warned. Because stars, like humans, knew better than to announce themselves too early. Below, the box of cookies remained unopened. The Chancellor dared not touch it, and thus the panic began, not with war, but with wonder. The Empire, proud and ancient, had always assumed that silence was submission. For millennia, its enemies had shouted, screamed, rebelled, or begged. Silence had never preceded anything but surrender, which made the human diplomats' refusal to negotiate all the more troubling. Across the galactic capital, confusion took root like a fast-growing vine, tangling bureaucracy, strangling consensus. Political analysts tried to decode Eliza Rhine's language, debating whether sugar was a term of threat, affection, or secret code. Military strategists demanded satellite scans of human space. Philosophers whispered that Earth had sent a priestess of war. The Seraphori prayed beneath the ocean of their moon, singing laments for the galaxy's future. And Eliza? She went shopping. The market district of Aletha Hive was a living creature, all pulsing light and bioluminescent currency. She strolled past spice vendors hawking crystalline flavors that rewrote taste buds, past artists weaving dreams into silk. She sampled roasted kelp, complimented a three-eyed baker's muffin, and bought a useless decorative knife shaped like a squid. A merchant asked if she was worried about tensions. Tensions. Eliza smiled. Sweetheart, I'm on vacation. You ever see someone start a war while holding a pastry? The merchant didn't laugh. She bought 2 muffins and walked on. Above her, spy drones tracked her every step. Not imperial, private sector, freelance, unofficial. Nobody wanted to admit how seriously they took her. Not yet. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. Back in the Conclave's strategic chambers, Vrokthok's paced along a neural map of possible human behavior, each branch glowing with simulated outcomes. 8 separate advisors reported simultaneously. She may be stalling. She's baiting us. They've seeded subterfuge in local trade nets. There's no proof. The Chancellor growled. She doesn't need proof. She's the proof. The arrogance. The calm. The AI liaison offered theory. It is possible, Chancellor, that human warfare prioritizes psychological instability in opponents over direct confrontation. Their history supports this. History? Bah. They're barely out of their own cradle. Yet they refuse to kneel. Kos, the Thornkrell Admiral, entered without preamble. His voice, deep and deliberate, silenced the chamber. She's doing exactly what she came to do, he said. You just don't know what it is yet. Vrokthok sneered. Then enlighten us, Admiral. She is measuring us, poking with words, logging our reactions. We're insects under glass. And what does she plan to do with that? Kos looked at the glowing map. Break us. Softly. The Chancellor dismissed him. But the idea lingered. Meanwhile, Eliza sat at a cafe on a floating balcony, overlooking the prism lakes of Sector 9. She watched a couple of feathered tourists try to feed holographic fish and fail. She drank her tea, not because she liked it, it was bitter, but because she'd noticed the server was a spy, and spies were easier when they thought they were being effective. Pretty, isn't it? She said aloud, without turning. The server froze. You tell your boss I appreciate the effort. Surveillance with a smile. That's progress. I don't know what you mean, he stammered. Sure, sugar. But let me leave you with this. The scarier thing than a smiling enemy is one who remembers your name. She tipped him generously. He left shaking. Eliza pulled out her clipboard and made a note. Test local paranoia. Result, fertile soil. At a restricted outpost in the outer moons, a Black Ops squad breached a small docking bay said to house a human cargo pod. They found nothing inside but a message scrawled on parchment in English. Curiosity killed the cat. Satisfaction buried the fleet. 3 of the squad left military service the next day. Earth's delegation sent no backup, no clarification, and no press releases. They just let Eliza smile, sip, and sow. Reports filtered in. Trade alliances paused. Civil unrest cracked the veneer of pacified worlds. The Empire had conquered 1,000 systems, but it had never once had to win a war with charm. Back in her quarters, Eliza hummed while slicing an alien fruit open. She answered a call from Earth Command, her voice light. "They've started surveillance on at least 6 fronts," she said. "Cost suspects. Vrokthok's panics, too much to be useful. And the jellyfish are emotionally exhausted." Her superior's voice was gravel over a storm. "Any sign they'll strike first?" "Not unless provoked. They're hoping to corner me into a mistake." "Will you give them one?" "I thought I might yawn in public," she said. "That'll ruin someone's day." She ended the call, paused, wrote one more note to herself. Empire not built on unity, built on compliance. Fragile. She didn't sleep that night. Humans could. She just didn't want to. It felt like missing the fun part of the storm. Down in Sector 4, a cloaked warship launched an unauthorized scan of Earth's solar system. What they saw confused more than it confirmed. No fleets. No weapons in orbit. No planetary defense rings. Just Earth rotating calmly, its continents dotted with irregular lights, clouds drifting with no apparent tactical pattern. It looked peaceful. A high priest of the Seraphori reviewed the data and declared it the stillness before the howl. The warship was later found adrift, its AI corrupted by a single file transmitted from Earth. The file simply read, "You looked. We noticed." Inside the conclave, desperation wore a mask of debate. A new proposal forced the human to comply. Detain her. Get answers. Eliza received the summons mid-meal. She put down her fork, smiled faintly, and told the waiter to wrap up the dessert. When they tried to escort her in chains, she laughed. "Oh, sweetie," she said, "you'd need bigger cuffs. And better reasons." They didn't cuff her. They walked her through the halls as eyes followed, some with hope, most with dread. By the time she reached the tribunal chamber, rumors had outpaced reality. She stood before them, hands clasped behind her back, completely relaxed. "You have created destabilization," Vrokthok's accused. "Y'all did that yourselves. I just pointed at the cracks. You've offered no cooperation. I offered cookies. You declined. Is this mockery? No, this is mercy. Mockery comes later if I'm bored." A diplomat pounded a crystal staff. "State your purpose." "I already did." "You said nothing." Eliza tilted her head. "Exactly. You are hereby detained." "Oh, I wouldn't." The room hushed. "I wouldn't detain me," she said again softly. "Not because I'm dangerous, but because someone, somewhere, already noticed you tried." The lights flickered. Vrokthok's barked orders. Engineers scrambled. Eliza remained still. "The Empire's vast," someone muttered. "We don't fear Earth." "Sure you do," she said, with that calm again. "You're just figuring out why." She turned, dismissed without ceremony, and walked out under guard. But no one touched her. Not really. Not as if they wanted to. Back in her cell, a comfortable suite by all standards, she waited. Not for rescue, for consequences. And they came. One by one, key systems began to report failures. Not big ones. Just enough. Weather grids that twitched. A vote that flipped wrong. A shipment of cooling cells that never arrived. Not traced. Not provable. But timed. Within 48 hours, 3 colonies paused tribute payments. 2 governors declared neutrality. A minor species declared Earth a protector. Back in the tribunal chamber, a package arrived. No name. No return. Inside, a music box. It played a tune none of them recognized. The box's lining read, "Negotiations continue, even if you're not invited." At the edge of the Empire's central sector, an ancient outpost, barely staffed, reported the appearance of a human probe. It transmitted no data. It simply sat in orbit, blinking slowly. When hailed, it responded once, in clear galactic common. "Are you watching closely?" That was all. The station commander requested reinforcements. None came. The budget for that sector had quietly been frozen hours earlier. No one had ordered it. In her detainment quarters, Eliza received a gift. A book. Alien folklore. No sender's name. Inside was a note. "You speak in riddles. So we listen for echoes." She smiled, genuine this time. Somebody out there was paying attention. Elsewhere, Admiral Koss held a council of his own, private, silent, deep within the hull of his flagship. No recording devices. No aides. Just him and a single sentence projected above the table. What if the war's already over? His lieutenants argued. Some thought it defeatist. Others saw the logic. Eliza's detainment ended without ceremony. She was released during a false emergency drill, quietly moved through diplomatic tunnels. No one stopped her. Later that evening, she met privately with an alien journalist. "Why are you here truly?" they asked. "Because your people forgot how to be afraid of silence." "And what's in it for you?" "Peace maybe. Power probably. But mostly, I just like watching bullies fold." The interview was never aired. The night before departure, a clerk asked, "Is Earth going to destroy us?" "No," she said. "Earth isn't here to destroy you. We're here to see if you destroy yourselves." In the morning, her departure was approved. No one dared stop her. A gift by the door, an ornate knife. She left it there. Her ship lifted off with no fanfare. But within hours, 20 systems delayed tribute. 3 planetary governors requested re-evaluation of their status. The conclave delayed its session due to lack of quorum. And, in her absence, something else arrived. A second human envoy, older, smiling. "Eliza says hi," he said. And so the game changed again. On Earth, a command room buzzed in silence. A recorded message played. You can't dismantle a machine with hammers. You whisper to the bolts until they loosen themselves. A forgotten probe began transmitting, 3 tones, in perfect rhythm. And somewhere, in a language no longer spoken, a proverb resurfaced. The deadliest predator is the one who makes you laugh, then vanish. And so they waited, and worried, and watched the skies. The second envoy was not like Eliza Rhine, where she moved like silk hiding a blade. He walked like an old gunslinger, deliberate, slow, aware of every eye watching him. His name was William Holt, a former linguist, a former colonel, and possibly something far older under the surface. He arrived with no luggage, but carried a suitcase of hard steel, polished dull by time. No guards. No entourage. No warning. "Y'all missed the point," he said on arrival, handing the port officer a lollipop. "So I've been sent to reintroduce it." At first, the Empire tried to ignore him. He was older, quieter. No dramatic entrances. Just a drawling man with good posture and a habit of staring too long at star maps. Yet, wherever he lingered, people grew nervous. Gravity shifted. Diplomats avoided his table in the Conclave Café. The Thorncrell War observers started arriving late. He spent his mornings reading physical books on a bench in the Arboretum, nodding politely to those who passed. The Chancellor ordered him shadowed. The spy tail assigned to him resigned after 3 days, citing moral fatigue. Koss watched Holt from afar. Something about the man felt unfinished, like a weapon sheathed, but not locked. When asked for a briefing, Koss simply said, "This one doesn't bait. He builds." And build Holt did. Quiet conversations in hallways. Unscheduled visits to forgotten ambassadorial wings. A nod here. A joke there. Within a week, 10 different species had filed unofficial appeals for cultural reassessment regarding their alignment with the Empire. None of those appeals came from humans. In the High Conclave, debate raged. The panic Eliza had planted was blooming into chaos. Now, Holt was tending the garden. "Earth has no right to destabilize our systems," Brockthog snapped. "They haven't destabilized anything," Koss corrected. "We did that to ourselves the moment we feared a smile." The Chancellor paced before the great prism, casting 8 reflections on the floor. It was bad enough with the woman. "Her name is Eliza," said Koss. "And she didn't threaten us. She watched us collapse. And this man? Same method. Different angle. They're showing us who we are, and we don't like the answer." Meanwhile, Holt took tea with a minor bureaucrat whose species communicated through synchronized vibrations in their skin. Holt tapped out rhythms with terrifying fluency. The bureaucrat resigned the next day and released a public statement calling Earth a mirror with teeth. At a press briefing, a journalist asked Holt what humanity truly wanted. He paused, smiled faintly. You ever see what happens when a whole ecosystem underestimates the opossum? The reporters didn't laugh. Later that night, someone broke into Holt's quarters. Nothing was taken, but a surveillance device planted in the lamp activated. The listening crew expected secrets. Instead, they heard Holt humming gospel under his breath while writing in a notebook labeled Gentle Annihilation. They shut the feed off 2 hours later, unsettled. The next day, a delegation from the fractured obsidian accord approached Holt during his walk through the archive spires. They asked if Earth was forming a coalition. He looked up from his book and said, "Coalitions are for people who need permission to win." They left in silence. Back in the command chambers, Vrokthaks held a closed-door meeting with the AI Advisory Council. He demanded simulations, full-scale war against Earth, containment protocols, cultural infiltration. None of the scenarios produced a clear win. Some predicted internal schisms. Others pointed to mass desertions. One simply ended with the words, "Outcome inconclusive. Confidence deteriorating." "We can't predict them," muttered a security analyst. "No," said Koss, who had been silent until then, "because they predict us." That night, Holt walked unannounced into the grand chamber where policy was being debated. He took a seat in the back row. No entourage, no title, no request to speak. The room faltered. A Kalari law scribe finally stood. "Do you have a statement, Ambassador Holt?" He looked up, eyes warm. "Just listening. Y'all are doing a fine job unraveling yourselves. Do you deny that Earth is exploiting psychological tactics?" "Oh, absolutely," he said. "We've had centuries of practice. Y'all are making it too easy." The Chancellor sputtered. "Then this is war." Holt tilted his head. "No, sir. This is a mirror. You're just upset by the reflection." Afterward, the conclave disbanded early. 3 species requested urgent renegotiation of their empire contracts. A 4th declared cultural neutrality and issued a planetary holiday in honor of strategic silence. On the outer fringes, imperial control waned. Pirate syndicates and resistance movements began citing Earth's actions as precedent for nonviolent subversion. A small collective of thinkers released a digital manifesto titled The Smile Doctrine, which included quotes attributed to Eliza and Holt that neither had said, but which nonetheless spread like wildfire. Somewhere on an oceanic planet, a monastery bell tolled. The monks there added a line to their prayer cycle: "Deliver us from the humans who arrive with kindness." Despite increased surveillance, neither Holt nor Earth's networks made any overt moves. No declarations, no troops, just conversations, just observations, just unnerving calm. In the depths of the old war vaults, Vrokthaks visited a room he hadn't entered in decades. He opened a file labeled Doom Protocol. Inside was a list of species once believed too dangerous to contact. Humanity had not been on it. He added them in ink. Back on his bench, Holt was approached by a child. Alien, curious, fearless. "Why do they all look scared of you?" the child asked. Holt offered a half-smile. "Because most grown-ups forgot that monsters don't always roar." "Are you a monster?" "No," he said. "I'm a story they don't know how to end." The next shift came not with explosions, but with an invitation. The Turin Scholar Circle, once fiercely neutral, invited Holt to a cultural exchange ceremony. No human had ever been allowed into the Singing Stones before. Holt accepted, arriving in ceremonial gray, unarmed and smiling. He didn't speak once during the ritual. But the next day, the Turin withdrew from the Empire and declared themselves under Earth's shadow, by our own will. Vrokthaks lost control of 5 minor systems within 72 hours. Meetings turned frantic. Words like containment and response escalation filled documents. Earth still hadn't fired a single shot. One diplomat broke protocol and asked Holt directly, "What would your people do if we attacked Earth?" He looked genuinely thoughtful. "Depends. Do you hit hard enough to kill us all?" "Hypothetically, yes." "Then nothing," Holt replied. we'd be dead. And if not, Holt stood, brushed imaginary lint from his shoulder. Then you'd be extinct. The message reached the conclave within the hour. By week's end, the Empire wasn't discussing how to control Earth. They were discussing how not to provoke it. Reports of spontaneous revolts began appearing, peaceful, but firm. Systems voted to audit their leadership. Bureaucratic corps stopped accepting centralized currency. Propaganda channels aired replays of Eliza's departure and Holt's quiet interjections. And in the dark space beyond the Empire's farthest reach, a strange beacon activated. It transmitted nothing but a pulse, slow and regular, like a heartbeat. Back on Earth, a child drew pictures of alien ships fleeing. Her parents laughed, but the Department of Observation filed it under sensitive archetype recurrence. Kids were weird, prophets sometimes weirder. In his final appearance before the conclave, Holt wore a dark blue coat and brought a paper gift bag. He stood at the center, calm as gravity. "I'm going home," he said. "Why?" asked Koss. "Because the dominoes are wobbling, and I don't like loud noises." Vrokthos, worn thin and twitching, shouted, "We won't fall." "No," Holt agreed. "You'll crack." Same result, just quieter. "What was your mission?" He held up the gift bag. "To deliver this." Inside, a tiny snow globe of Earth. A little spinning blue marble. Handcrafted. No technology. Just a keepsake. "What does it mean?" someone whispered. "It means," Holt said, "we're not mad. Just disappointed." He turned and left. Within an hour of his departure, 17 minor powers froze cooperation with the Empire. At a remote station, a recording loop began. Eliza's voice, low and clear. "You can hear the smile. Now ask what comes next." In the days that followed Holt's departure, the Empire began holding internal audits. Councils convened. Disciplinary hearings were scheduled. Entire archives were reclassified. But the rot was no longer theoretical. It was visible. Too many ambassadors looked out windows rather than at each other. The Chancellor attempted a broadcast to restore unity. The feed cut out mid-speech, replaced briefly by static and the faint sound of laughter. It was not a joyful sound. On a desert world in the Anchor Quadrant, children began drawing stick figures with Earth flags. No one had taught them the symbol. A teacher asked where they'd seen it. "In our dreams," one said. "The nice people who scare the bad ones gave us a flag." The teacher retired that week. A final report filtered up to the conclave's AI. A fleet from the Eastern Spiral Arm, unrelated to Earth, had begun dismantling its own ships. When asked why, their admiral replied, "The game changed. We don't know the rules anymore." In a quiet chamber beneath the Capitol, Koss read a handwritten message left in his quarters. It read, "You are one of the few. Listen more. Lead less. Eliza." He folded it carefully and locked it in his chest plate. Earth had left no fleets, no monuments, no orders. Just whispers. But whispers, given the right silence, reshape empires. The final sign came when the Imperial anthem played across the internal comms, then slowed, then reversed, until a single phrase emerged, unmistakably human. "We're still watching." And then silence. Somewhere in the stars, a new envoy prepared for departure. She wasn't smiling. Yet, out there, the stars listened too. And somewhere, quietly, they began to realign. Silently, completely. It began quietly. There was no declaration, no star-devouring fleet, no firelit sky. There was only a pause, a silence that was different, thicker, measured. In the vacuum left by Holt's departure, the galaxy had begun to fracture. Whole systems redrew allegiances not through battle, but through absence. Governors resigned before being asked. Trade hubs began ignoring conclave currencies. Even long-loyal species whispered of the humans, as if speaking a sacred curse. Koss stood in his command chamber overlooking the central axis of the Empire, once luminous, now dimming in patches. For the first time in his career, he did not bark orders. He reviewed nothing. He simply watched the cracks crawl across the infrastructure like frost. They were losing, not to weapons, to stories, to silence, to the ghosts of two polite humans who had never raised their voices. The final envoy arrived without an introduction. She was not Eliza Rhine, and she was not William Holt. She was young. She did not smile. Her eyes did not sparkle. She wore nothing that marked her as dangerous. But when she walked through the gate of the conclave, two species ambassadors stepped aside without knowing why. Her name was Morganvale. She did not bring cookies. She did not speak of maps or metaphors. She said only this: "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to record your answers." The conclave demanded a formal hearing. She nodded. In the grand chamber, the air was tight with exhaustion. Fear no longer roared. It sighed. Delegates fidgeted, their once opulent garb wrinkled by nights without sleep. Even Vrocthox looked diminished, his scales dulled, his voice carrying a tremor it had never known. "You are the third human sent here. What is it you want from us?" Morgan sat, clipboard in hand. "We've observed. We've measured your structure. We've assessed your cohesion. Now, we're here to finalize your risk profile." "You speak as if we are a disease." "No," she said, turning a page. "We study ecosystems. Some evolve. Some collapse. You can't possibly believe Earth has authority here. We don't need authority. We have options." A flurry of murmurs surged like a storm surge against the chamber walls. Someone slammed a staff. Others began shouting. Koss stood. He didn't shout. He simply raised one armored hand. "Let her speak." Morgan's gaze didn't soften. "You created an empire through pressure, fear, assumed compliance. You misunderstood silence as obedience. Our silence was calculation. We've done nothing to provoke war." "You didn't have to," she replied. "You provoked awareness. And awareness, when seated properly, blooms into resistance. This is manipulation. No, this is a mirror. You just don't like what you see in it." Morganvale's presence altered gravity. Not physically, not chemically, but in the way that a predator alters the mood of a forest. Conversations stopped when she passed. Strategic meetings paused. Delegates whispered not about retaliation, but about timelines, about contingency bunkers, about what it meant that humans had stopped persuading and started judging. Koss requested a private meeting. She accepted. They met in a garden dome above the Capitol, a place designed for peace talks, now too quiet. "You're different," Koss said. "Not like the others." Morgan nodded. "Holt was the breath before the shot. Eliza was the bullet. I'm the sound that follows." He studied her, measured and slow. "You've already won, haven't you? We never wanted to win. We wanted to decide." "Decide what?" "Who survives the fallout." Koss didn't flinch. "And have you?" "Not yet." She rose. "But soon." The empire didn't wait to be unmade. It began cannibalizing itself. Factions accused each other of collusion with Earth. Trade routes were cut in acts of preemptive sabotage. Whole military units vanished into unmarked hyperspace lanes. The Chancellor's last address was a plea for unity, but the transmission was jammed halfway through by an anonymous signal playing Earth jazz under whispered numbers. The code was cracked hours later. It read, "If you feel this disoriented without a war, you were never strong, only organized." Morgan watched from a balcony. Her fingers tapped slowly against her datapad. Below her, 5 minor species declared secession from the Empire and broadcast their intentions to enter diplomatic channels with Earth. Not for surrender, for permission. The conclave erupted. Words like treason and mutiny flew like plasma bolts. Morgan stayed seated. A senator from the outer belt approached her after the hearing. He was old, tired. "Is there no way to fix this?" he asked. "There was," she said. 3 envoys ago." He nodded and walked away. Later that evening, Koss stood before his private war terminal, reading encrypted messages from sectors that no longer obeyed. He keyed in a priority-level communique to Earth. It contained one word: why? Morgan's reply arrived 3 hours later. "Because you made obedience a currency, and then you raised the price." The final moment didn't come with explosions, either. It came when the Empire's AI core went dark. The system, older than most worlds, had predicted billions of scenarios. It had adapted to cultural upheaval, rebellion, piracy, famine. It had no protocols for polite humans, with long memories and longer silences. The last message the core transmitted was a query. Is silence equivalent to annihilation? No answer came. The chamber flickered. Monitors dimmed. And the Empire, once unshakable, found itself drifting. Earth sent no fleet. Morgan left no trace. But in every corridor of power, her words lingered. You weren't defeated. You were diagnosed. The remnants of the once golden empire gathered for an emergency session, not in the Grand Chamber, but in a hollowed-out transmission bunker beneath the planet's surface. Lights flickered. Heat was rationed. And yet the fear in the room had less to do with enemies, and more to do with the humans they had allowed in. Vrokthos was not the Chancellor anymore. The title had dissolved days ago when half the council declared autonomy. Still, he stood at the head of the table, voice raw. They cannot dismantle what they do not own, he insisted. A diplomat from the scaled colonies leaned in, eyes burning. Then why does everyone listen when they speak? They're not speaking, said a soft voice from the end of the room. Morgan Vale stood, her coat dusted with ash from one of the lower city's street riots. She hadn't been invited. They're watching, she said. You are not authorized to address this council. There is no council, she replied. There are only frightened echoes. Someone drew a weapon. Koss stepped between. She's not armed. No, said Morgan. But you are. The ambassador lowered his weapon. Vrokthos turned toward her, his voice now brittle. You came to finish it? No. I came to confirm it's over. You speak as if we didn't resist. Oh, you resisted. You clung. You barked. You blamed. That's not resistance. That's denial. Then what is this? He shouted. What have you done to us? Morgan looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. We reintroduced doubt, and you mistook it for defeat. Silence held. And then, as if coordinated by some cosmic joke, a child's laughter echoed from the emergency corridor beyond. A refugee, probably. Too young to care about collapsing empires. Too innocent to fear shadows shaped like earth. Morgan stepped forward and placed her clipboard on the center of the table. It displayed no map, no data, just a list. A very short list. What is this? Vrokthos asked. Those who are salvageable. Someone gasped. You. We didn't come to conquer. We came to evaluate. Koss leaned forward. And Morgan didn't blink. You'll find out in about 6 hours. They watched her leave. The door shut behind her. And the Empire, such as it was, waited. 6 hours later, across 100 systems, Earth's message arrived. Not through warships, but through activation codes embedded in communications satellites long believed dormant. The message was a set of coordinates. Each one pointed not to Earth, but to a sanctuary. Places prepared, places chosen. Safe worlds for those willing to sever ties with the old way. And one last offer. This is not surrender. It's your second chance. The transmission ended, and across every star-strewn corner of what had once been a single empire, beings stared at the coordinates. Some wept, some raged, but many, perhaps most, simply sat in stillness. Koss stood on a landing platform under a rust-colored sky, wind keening low around his armor. A small shuttle awaited him. It bore no markings. It had no weapons, but it was bound for one of the safe coordinates. He stared at it for a long time. He remembered battles, victories, losses. None of them had prepared him for a quiet invitation. Morgan joined him there. You could stay, she said. I know, he replied. Why go? Because I believe you. She nodded. No triumph in her eyes. Just sorrow. We'll need people who remember, she said. He boarded. Vrokthos did not. He broadcast a final message to his species, urging resistance, legacy, rage. But even as he spoke, most of his people had already begun uploading their applications to the human sanctuaries. His speech cut out halfway. No one reconnected it. In the sanctuary systems, new networks flickered to life. Earth's people greeted each arrival not with speeches, but with food, shelter, books, music. No oaths were demanded. No loyalty required. Just one rule: do better. Centuries later, long after Earth had faded into myth, after its people had blended with the stars and left behind no fixed capital, a traveler found a journal. It was tucked beneath a stone on an unmarked moon, weathered, fragile. The first page read, "Notes from Observation, Eliza Rhine." The traveler, a historian from a distant world, read through pages filled not with conquests, but with reflections. Names of species she'd met, moments she'd noticed, questions she never got to ask. The last entry was brief. Success isn't measured in what we destroy. It's what we leave standing. He closed the journal slowly, and then he looked up. The stars blinked above him like a knowing hush. He understood something then, that the story of humanity wasn't about strength or victory. It was about restraint, about knowing how terrifying true potential could be, and choosing not to wield it recklessly. The traveler took the journal and placed it in his ship. And, as he lifted off, he passed a small satellite. Still transmitting, still waiting, not for a call to arms, but for a reason to answer. Back on Earth, wherever it was, no parades were held. No monuments stood tall. The legacy was not in statues or systems. It was in the pause that came after every threat, the tension before every decision, the quiet before every new empire formed. Because someone somewhere had heard a smile and remembered what came next. And far beyond, past the reach of censors or suspicion, Earth waited, still smiling, always listening, in perfect silence.